I can give her a tough time. But yeah, I'm expecting a tough match and I'll do my best to be prepared for that.
6 wins over top 10 opponents in a single calendar year. 6 times in 2026, Alexandra Eala of the Philippines has walked onto a WTA tour, faced a player ranked among the 10 best in the world, and walked off the winner. The most recent one arrived late Thursday night in Washington, D.C., when the 21-year-old dismissed the second seed and world number 10, Elina Svitolina, 6-3, 6-4 in a quarterfinal that lasted the exact length of a movie. That win, per ESPN's match report, is her 6th top 10
Of course, Elina hit some good shots. She was being aggressive, especially in that second set.
It also booked the match everyone in Filipino tennis and a large portion of Japanese tennis had been quietly circling on a calendar for weeks. On Saturday afternoon at 3:30
win over a top 10 player this season as she books a third.
Context matters before the story can start. Eala enters the semifinal as the world number 28, a career high she reached after her 4th-round run at Wimbledon last month. Osaka is the number 3 seed, the world number 14, and a 4-time Grand Slam champion who reached her first-ever Washington quarterfinal this week and is playing her second semifinal of the 2026 season. This is their first-ever meeting on the WTA Tour. The framing this story wants to pull toward is a familiar one: the underdog Cinderella, a young player from a country without a tennis tradition, drawing the giant. Resist it, because the more useful way to see Saturday is not one line against another but 2 lines converging. Osaka's line began at the top and has been climbing back up after motherhood and mental health absences that would have ended most careers. 5 weeks ago at Wimbledon, seeded 14th, she beat world number 1 Aryna Sabalenka in the 4th round on her way to a quarterfinal, her deepest run at the All England club per Wikipedia's tournament record. She is not a legend being paraded through a bracket. She is a former world number 1 who is right now at 28 years old playing her way back into the room she used to own. Eala's line began somewhere else entirely: a junior slam title at the US Open in 2022, a WTA 125 title in Birmingham on grass earlier this year, and the Miami semifinal in 2025 that made the tennis world learn how to spell her name. 2 players on very different trajectories arriving Saturday at the same door. That is the real story of this semifinal. Not victim and villain, not past against future, but 2 players who both in different ways are proving something to a tour that had already decided who they were. And the tension is not manufactured, because both of them have already spoken about each other publicly on the record before this week's draw was even set, which brings us to the evidence. The reasons this semifinal is a match, not a walkover in either direction, start with the ledger, because the numbers do not read like an accident. 6 top 10 wins in 2026 is not a Cinderella tally. It is a pattern, and 3 of those 6 wins arrived inside a 5-day window in Washington. On July 28, Eala opened her tournament against Zheng Qinwen, the Olympic gold medalist, entering as a wild card. Eala lost the first set, then took the next 2 4-6, 6-4, 6-1 per ESPN's match report. 2 days later she faced Leylah Fernandez, the defending DC Open champion, a left-hander who had beaten her 6-1, 6-4 in Stuttgart in April. Eala won it 6-2, 7-6-1. And then Thursday against Svitolina, the world number 10 and Rome champion, she secured a 6-3, 6-4 straight sets victory. Olympic champion, defending champion, top 10 veteran. 3 completely different problems, 3 solutions in 5 days. The Svitolina win in particular carries a detail worth pausing on. 5 weeks earlier in June on the grass of the Berlin Open, Eala had beat Svitolina in a quarterfinal by exactly the same score, 6-3, 6-4. Thursday's rematch on a hard court thousands of miles away produced the identical result. The scoreline is not a coincidence in the mystical sense. It is a diagnostic. Svitolina herself, speaking to the WTA the day before, had said the change of surface, country, and city might swing things her way. It did not. According to ESPN's live match report, Eala won 24 return points to Svitolina's 13 in the first set alone. She saved 3 break points at 3-3 in that same set by reeling off 5 consecutive points, and broke Svitolina 4 times overall. The numerically inferior player controlled the return game against one of the tour's better returners. On paper, this is not the profile of a lucky draw. The rival framing sharpens because Osaka has already gone on record saying Eala's name. In an interview reported earlier this year by Tennis World USA and Philippine outlets including ABS-CBN, Osaka was asked about the young Filipina and said, "I don't know much about Alex, but I think she's incredible. I think she's a star, and it's just really cool to have someone like her." That was months ago, before Wimbledon, before this week. Thursday night after the Svitolina win, an ESPN reporter asked Eala about Saturday's opponent. Her answer was equally clean. She's of course such an accomplished player. I think she's made waves on and off the tennis court for so many reasons. There's so much respect for her for that. Neither of those quotes contains an ounce of trash talk. That is precisely why they matter. Rivals do not have to hate each other to be rivals. What makes this a rivalry, even a first meeting one, is that both players have already publicly acknowledged the other exists in a way that most players simply do not do about lower-ranked opponents. Osaka named Eala before she was a top 30 player. Eala's answer Thursday named specifically the things Osaka is best known for beyond tennis: her cultural weight, her mental health advocacy, the parts of her career that made her a global figure and not just a champion. Both players are treating this like a meeting between peers. The rankings say one is 14 and the other is 28. The words the two of them have spoken about each other suggest they see it differently. Let it sit for a moment. That is the room she has entered. A room where four-time Grand Slam champions know your name, know your ranking, and speak about you before the draw is made. The rival framing collapses if the opposing player is presented as anything less than she is. Naomi Osaka in 2026 is not the Osaka of 2019. She is better in the specific sense that matters. She is playing tour tennis again consistently at 28 years old after time away for motherhood and mental health. At Wimbledon last month she reached her first-ever quarterfinal seeded 14th, and the round before that she beat world number 1 Elina Svitolina. Her path to the Washington semifinal was not clean. She needed a first-round win, then an assist when Ashlyn Kruger retired with a right ankle injury on Thursday in that quarterfinal. She dropped the opening set to Italy's Elisabetta Cox-Erretto before winning 4-6, 6-4, 6-3 in a 2-hour, 11-minute grind per the WTA's match report. She has looked frustrated at times this week, but she is also into her second semifinal of the 2026 season. If Eala plays Osaka the way she played Svitolina, the return game numbers suggest she can extract free points from an Osaka service game that has been imperfect this week. If Osaka plays Eala the way she played Sablenka at Wimbledon, the free points do not exist. That is the match. That is the entire tennis question of Saturday afternoon. And it is a real question, not a rhetorical one. The authority voice for this whole story is not a pundit, a coach, or a former player behind a microphone. It is Elina Svitolina speaking to the WTA the day before she lost. Asked about the rematch, she said, "It was not an easy battle for me in Berlin. Tomorrow is a new surface, new country, a new city. So it's a new challenge, and hopefully I'm going to draw some confidence from today's match and carry it into tomorrow." Read that quote again with the result now in your ear. This is a 31-year-old veteran, a 2018 WTA Finals champion, the current Italian Open title holder, the world number 10 and the second seed in the draw. She is not dismissing Eala. She's trying to convince herself out loud that the reasons the last match went the way it did no longer apply. New surface, new country, new city. 24 hours later, the surface, country, and city produced the identical scoreline. The single most credible voice available to us for a preview of Saturday is a top 10 player who told the WTA press why she should beat Alex Eala and then did not. That is the authority, a stated hypothesis tested inside 24 hours and falsified. Whatever happens Saturday against Osaka, the case that Eala's grass results were surface-specific, the last remaining reasonable doubt about her breakthrough, has been retired publicly by the opponent herself. Zoom out for a second and consider what this run means beyond one bracket. The Mubadala Citi DC Open is the opening WTA 500 of the North American hardcourt swing. Next week, the tour moves to Toronto for the National Bank Open, a WTA 1000. The week after that, Cincinnati, another WTA 1000. Then at the end of August, the US Open, where Eala already has direct entry into the main draw as a top 30 player. Semifinal points at a WTA 500 do not just add to a ranking. They build seeding leverage for the 1000s and the slams that follow. A player who arrives at the US Open having beaten Zheng, Fernandez, and Svitolina in 1 week and pushed Osaka in a semifinal arrives with a different kind of draw expectation than a player scraping through qualifying. The compounding effect is real, and it is why the tennis calendar treats this specific stretch of the year as a launchpad. There is also a broader significance that goes beyond one player's ranking. Osaka against Eala on Saturday afternoon is Japan against the Philippines in a WTA 500 semifinal in the United States, two of the most visible Asian players in the sport from two countries whose tennis histories do not overlap, meeting in a match with real stakes on both sides. That is not a small thing for the sport, and it is not a small thing for the two populations watching. Filipino sports desks at Rappler, The Inquirer, GMA, and ABS-CBN led with the Svitolina result within an hour of match point. The overnight watching pattern for Filipino fans, where match times in the U.S. afternoon fall into the small hours of Friday and Saturday morning in Manila, is by now a familiar rhythm on the diaspora tennis calendar. On the other side of the bracket, Japanese tennis has its most decorated female player in a generation back deep in a hard-court draw. Both fan bases have something real to watch. A straight highlight reel would not tell you the full shape of it. Less than 24 hours before Eala walked onto court against Svitolina, she was down 1-5 in the second set against Leylah Fernandez. Having already lost the momentum, having watched the defending champion break her 3 times in one set, having watched Fernandez consolidate a lead that would have sent the match to third set, from that 1-5 second set breakdown with the defending champion serving, Eala won 6 of the next 7 games and the tiebreak 7-1 per ESPN's match report. Earlier in the year in April, Fernandez had beaten her 6-1, 6-4 in Stuttgart in an hour and change. Wednesday night in Washington, the same opponent, the same left-handed variety. The same problems that had been unsolvable in April were solved from an almost lost position. The point of noting this is not sentiment. The point is that whatever Eala brings to Saturday afternoon against Osaka is not the game of a player who has been coasting through her draw. It is the game of a player who has been in trouble in this tournament and who has twice now played her way out of it. So here is where this leaves us on the Saturday morning of the semifinal. Alex Eala is the world number 28. She has 6 top 10 wins in 2026, 3 of them secured in 5 days at this tournament. She has beaten the same top 10 opponent twice by the exact same score on 2 different surfaces. She is, in Naomi Osaka's own words, a star. She is, in Elina Svitolina's own words, worthy of a complete geographical excuse for a defeat. She has come from a set and a breakdown to defeat a defending champion. She's going to walk onto a hard court in Washington on Saturday afternoon to play a 4-time Grand Slam champion and former world number 1 for a spot in a WTA 500 final. The room she is in now is not the room she was in a year ago. The room she is in now has Naomi Osaka in it on the other side of the net at 3:30 Eastern. It has Leylah Fernandez in it, no longer as the defending champion she fell to, but as a peer she can now conquer. It has Elina Svitolina in it twice at 6-3, 6-4. It has Venus Williams standing beside her in the doubles draw of this same tournament. That is not a Cinderella room. That is the room where careers get built week after week at this level until the ranking finally catches up to the resume. Whether she beats Naomi Osaka on Saturday afternoon or loses to her, she has already this week moved the door. Turn on the semifinal Saturday at 3:30 Eastern on your regional tennis channel or WTA feed. If you have followed this channel through the Miami run last year, through Wimbledon last month, through the 3 matches this week, you know what to do. If this is your first Alex story, welcome. There will be more. The tour is not slowing down. The debate question? Is Eala's relentless baseline pressure and red-hot 2026 top 10 record enough to overwhelm Osaka's championship pedigree, or is Osaka's peak hardcourt ceiling still an insurmountable wall? Drop your take in the comments below. We are the room where the early believers talk to each other.